My name is Jessica Parker, and on what should have been the happiest night of my life, I watched my sister Amanda seduce my fiancé Marcus in front of 150 guests at our engagement party. I stood frozen in my silver dress as they slow danced to our song, her hand on his chest, his eyes locked on hers like I didn't exist. 3 months of planning, 6 years of sisterly trust, and 2 years of believing I'd found my soulmate shattered in a single evening. But what I discovered 6 weeks later would reveal that everything I thought I knew about that night was a carefully orchestrated lie designed to protect me from something far more dangerous than heartbreak. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The September air in Denver carried the first hint of autumn as I stepped off the plane at DIA, exhaustion weighing down my shoulders after 3 grueling months in Seattle. As Regional Marketing Director for TechFlow Solutions, I had just successfully launched our Pacific Northwest expansion, a career milestone that should have felt triumphant. Instead, all I could think about was getting home to Marcus and finalizing the details for our engagement party, now just 2 weeks away. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus as I waited for my luggage. "Landing safely? Can't wait to see you tonight. Amanda's been incredible helping with party planning." The message warmed my heart. My sister Amanda had volunteered to coordinate vendors and logistics while I was consumed with the Seattle project, and according to Marcus's regular updates, she had transformed our modest celebration plans into something spectacular. Amanda and I hadn't always been close. At 31, she was 3 years older and had followed a completely different path through life. While I pursued marketing and corporate advancement, she built a successful real estate career in Denver's luxury market. Her marriage to David Wells 2 years ago had been the elegant affair our late parents would have been proud of, complete with a reception at the Brown Palace and a honeymoon in Tuscany. Sometimes I felt like the practical younger sister trailing behind her polished sophistication, but Marcus had changed that dynamic. When I met him at a networking event 18 months ago, I was immediately drawn to his quiet confidence and genuine interest in my work. Unlike the finance guys I typically encountered who saw marketing as frivolous, Marcus understood the strategic complexity of building brand awareness in competitive markets. Our relationship developed gradually, built on long conversations about our professional ambitions and shared values around financial responsibility and family loyalty. Marcus Thompson worked as a senior financial advisor with Mountain West Financial Group, specializing in high-net-worth client portfolios and complex investment strategies. His expertise complemented my marketing background perfectly. We often discussed the psychological aspects of consumer behavior and investor decision-making, finding fascinating parallels between our respective fields. He proposed 6 months ago during a weekend trip to Vail, presenting me with our grandmother's ring that Uncle Robert had preserved since our parents' death 5 years earlier. The engagement party had been Marcus's idea. He wanted to celebrate our commitment with both our professional networks and extended families before we began serious wedding planning. We chose the Grand Ballroom at Hotel Monaco for its elegant atmosphere and convenient downtown location. The guest list included colleagues from both our companies, Amanda and David, Uncle Robert and his wife Patricia, plus Marcus's parents who were flying in from Phoenix and various college friends scattered across the country. Amanda had embraced the planning process with characteristic enthusiasm. During my weekly check-in calls from Seattle, she would excitedly describe progress on floral arrangements, menu selections, and entertainment options. She had negotiated upgraded linens, secured a jazz quartet that Marcus particularly admired, and even arranged for professional photography through her real estate connections. Her attention to detail impressed both Marcus and me, and I felt grateful to have a sister willing to invest so much energy in making our celebration special. The 3 months in Seattle had been professionally rewarding but personally challenging. Launching a new branch office required 16-hour days, constant client meetings, and weekend strategy sessions that left little time for maintaining relationships back home. I spoke with Marcus almost daily, but our conversations were often hurried exchanges between my meetings and his client appointments. I missed his steady presence and looked forward to re-establishing our regular rhythms once I returned to Denver. Amanda and I spoke less frequently during this period, mainly because she was busy with her real estate clients and I was overwhelmed with launch responsibilities. When we did connect, she focused on party planning updates and seemed genuinely excited about the celebration. She mentioned spending considerable time with Marcus to coordinate vendor schedules and finalize arrangements, which I appreciated given my unavailability for local meetings. The Seattle project had been a significant career opportunity, positioning me for potential promotion to Vice President of Regional Operations. My supervisor had specifically chosen me for the assignment based on my track record with the Denver expansion 2 years earlier. The responsibility was both flattering and intimidating, requiring me to establish new client relationships while maintaining oversight of existing Denver accounts through remote management. Living in a corporate apartment in Belltown for 3 months had felt surreal. Seattle's coffee culture and Pacific Northwest lifestyle provided interesting contrast to Denver's mountain-focused outdoor scene, but I never seriously considered relocating permanently. My life was rooted in Colorado, where Marcus and I planned to build our future together. We had already begun discussing neighborhoods for our first home purchase, evaluating school districts for eventual children, and mapping out the kind of life we wanted to create. Marcus had been incredibly supportive throughout the Seattle assignment. He sent flowers to my temporary office during particularly stressful weeks, arranged surprise food deliveries when I worked late, and patiently listened to my frustrations with difficult clients or bureaucratic obstacles. His emotional support made the separation bearable and reinforced my conviction that we were building something lasting together. My relationship with Amanda during this period seemed stronger than it had been since our college years. She appeared genuinely invested in making our engagement party memorable, often texting photos of flower arrangements or fabric samples for my approval. Her enthusiasm felt authentic, and I was touched by the effort she was putting into celebrating Marcus and me. It seemed like our bond as sisters was finally maturing into the friendship our parents had always hoped we would develop. The taxi ride from DIA to my Lodo apartment took nearly an hour through Friday evening traffic, giving me time to process being back in familiar surroundings. Denver's skyline looked smaller after 3 months of Seattle's waterfront views, but the sight of the Rocky Mountains rising behind the city filled me with a sense of homecoming that Seattle's dramatic landscapes had never quite provided. This was where I belonged, where Marcus and I would start our married life. My apartment building's lobby smelled like the vanilla candles the management company used to create ambiance.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I had forgotten during my time away. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt routine yet foreign, like returning to a previous version of myself. I had changed during the Seattle assignment, gaining confidence in my leadership abilities and clearer vision for my career trajectory. I hoped Marcus would notice and appreciate this growth. Marcus was waiting in my apartment when I arrived, having used his key to prepare a welcome home dinner from my favorite Thai restaurant. The thoughtfulness of the gesture struck me immediately. After months of corporate catering and room service, the familiar flavors of pad thai and green curry felt like emotional comfort food. He had also arranged fresh flowers throughout the apartment and created a playlist of songs we had discovered together during our courtship. Our reunion felt both natural and slightly awkward, the way relationships sometimes do after extended separation. We had maintained emotional intimacy through daily phone calls and video chats, but physical presence carried different energy that needed to be re-established. Marcus seemed slightly nervous, which I attributed to excitement about the upcoming party and perhaps concern about whether 3 months apart had changed our dynamic. We spent the evening catching up on details that hadn't made it into our phone conversations. He described challenges with several demanding clients, a new partnership opportunity his firm was considering, and his growing friendship with David, Amanda's husband, who had become a regular golf partner. I shared stories about Seattle's competitive business environment, the innovative marketing strategies I had implemented, and my relief at successfully completing such a high-visibility assignment. Marcus asked numerous questions about my Seattle colleagues and whether I had formed any lasting professional relationships that might influence future career decisions. His interest seemed slightly more intense than casual curiosity, but I appreciated his investment in understanding my professional growth. He had always been supportive of my ambitions, even when they required personal sacrifices like extended travel or weekend work commitments. Amanda called while we were finishing dinner, eager to discuss final party preparations. She suggested meeting the next morning at Snooze Cafe to review vendor confirmations and timeline details. Her voice carried excitement that felt infectious, and I found myself looking forward to sister bonding time that had been rare since her marriage. Marcus encouraged the meeting, saying Amanda had worked incredibly hard to make everything perfect. That night, sleeping in my own bed with Marcus beside me felt like reclaiming a life that had been temporarily suspended. The familiar sounds of downtown Denver traffic and the mountain breeze through my bedroom windows created a sense of security that Seattle's urban ambiance had never provided. I was home, my career was advancing successfully, and in 2 weeks Marcus and I would celebrate our commitment surrounded by everyone important to us. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with that particular Colorado sunshine that makes everything seem possible. I dressed carefully for my meeting with Amanda, choosing a casual outfit that struck the right balance between sisterly comfort and respect for her professional appearance standards. Amanda had always been more fashion-conscious than me, and I wanted to show appreciation for her planning efforts by looking appropriately put together. Snooze Cafe on 17th Street was bustling with Saturday morning crowds, but Amanda had secured a corner booth with relative privacy for our discussion. She looked radiant in a way I hadn't seen since her wedding day, her auburn hair perfectly styled and her makeup applied with professional precision. Success in luxury real estate had always suited her, but she seemed to be glowing with particular satisfaction. She had prepared a comprehensive binder containing vendor contracts, timeline schedules, and detailed logistics for every aspect of the party. The level of organization impressed me, reflecting the project management skills that made her successful with high-end property transactions. Every detail had been carefully considered, from valet parking arrangements to dietary accommodations for guests with food allergies. The floral arrangements she had selected were more elaborate than anything Marcus and I had initially envisioned. White roses and peonies with touches of silver ribbon created an elegant aesthetic that would complement the grand ballroom's sophisticated atmosphere. The jazz quartet she had hired included a vocalist capable of performing our favorite songs, and she had arranged for special lighting that would create romantic ambiance without overwhelming the space. Most impressive was the guest coordination she had managed while I was in Seattle. Amanda had personally contacted each invitee to confirm attendance, dietary preferences, and parking needs. She had created a seating chart that balanced professional relationships with family dynamics, ensuring comfortable conversation groupings throughout the evening. Her attention to social nuances reflected years of hosting successful real estate client events. As we reviewed each element, I felt increasingly grateful for Amanda's investment in making our celebration special. She had transformed what might have been a simple cocktail reception into an elegant affair worthy of the commitment Marcus and I were celebrating. Her enthusiasm about every detail seemed genuine, and I appreciated having a sister who cared enough to dedicate significant time and energy to our happiness. Amanda asked detailed questions about my Seattle experience, particularly about the clients I had worked with and the professional relationships I had developed. She seemed especially interested in the financial aspects of the expansion project and whether I had gained insights into investment patterns or economic trends that might affect Denver's real estate market. Her questions felt natural given her professional focus, and I enjoyed being able to share knowledge that might benefit her business. The conversation eventually turned to more personal topics, including her marriage to David and my relationship with Marcus. Amanda spoke warmly about how much she and David enjoyed spending time with Marcus, describing him as thoughtful and genuinely caring in ways that impressed them both. She mentioned that Marcus had sought David's advice about engagement ring insurance and wedding venue selection, which touched me with its consideration for protecting our investment. Most significantly, Amanda expressed how much she had enjoyed getting to know Marcus better during my absence. She described him as someone with depth and integrity that became more apparent through extended interaction. Her approval meant more to me than I had realized given our sometimes competitive sister dynamic and her high standards for evaluating people's character and intentions. As our meeting concluded, Amanda handed me a small gift bag containing a silver bracelet with our grandmother's birthstone. She explained that she wanted me to have something meaningful to wear at the engagement party, connecting our celebration to family history and honoring the women who had come before us. The gesture felt deeply thoughtful and reinforced my appreciation for the effort she had invested in making our night special. Walking back to my apartment after our meeting, I felt optimistic about both the upcoming party and my relationship with Amanda. We seemed to have found a mature sister dynamic built on mutual respect and genuine care for each other's happiness. Her investment in Marcus's and my celebration felt like validation of our relationship and blessing of our future together. Marcus was waiting at my apartment with coffee and croissants from our favorite bakery, eager to hear about my meeting with Amanda. His interest in the planning details seemed slightly more intense than typical male engagement with party logistics, but I appreciated his investment in making the evening successful. He asked specific questions about guest arrangements and timeline coordination that demonstrated his attention to ensuring everything proceeded smoothly. The following 2 weeks passed quickly as we finalized personal preparations while Amanda handled vendor coordination. Marcus seemed increasingly excited about the party, though sometimes I noticed him appearing preoccupied or distracted during our conversations. When I asked about his mood, he attributed any tension to work pressures and anticipation about such a significant celebration of our relationship. 3 days before the party, Marcus surprised me with reservations at Garden Grace for a pre-celebration dinner. He wanted us to have quiet time together before the excitement of the public event, he explained. The thoughtfulness of the gesture reinforced my confidence in our relationship and my excitement about publicly celebrating our commitment to building a life together. That dinner remains vivid in my memory because of Marcus's particular intensity that evening. He asked numerous questions about my feelings regarding marriage, my expectations for our future, and my trust in our relationship's foundation. At the time, I interpreted his curiosity as natural pre-engagement party nerves combined with genuine interest in ensuring we shared compatible visions for our life together. The morning of our engagement party dawned sunny and mild, perfect weather for September in Denver. I spent the day at a spa with Nicole Chen, my college roommate and maid of honor, indulging in treatments that would help me look and feel radiant for the evening ahead. Nicole had flown in from Portland specifically for the celebration, and her presence added to my excitement about sharing this milestone with people who mattered most. Nicole and I had maintained close friendships since our University of Colorado days, despite living in different cities and pursuing different career paths. She worked in sustainable architecture and brought a practical perspective to relationships that I valued. During our spa day, she asked thoughtful questions about Marcus and my future plans, expressing genuine happiness about my engagement while offering the kind of honest feedback that only close friends can provide. As evening approached and I prepared for the party, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that seemed appropriate for such a significant celebration. The silver dress I had chosen complemented my grandmother's ring beautifully, and my professional makeup application had created the elegant look I hoped to achieve. Everything felt aligned for a perfect evening celebrating Marcus's and my commitment to each other. The grand ballroom at Hotel Monaco looked stunning when Marcus and I arrived for our own party. Amanda's planning had transformed the space into something magical, with soft lighting, elegant floral arrangements, and subtle music creating an atmosphere of sophisticated celebration. Guests were beginning to arrive, and the energy felt warm and anticipatory as friends and colleagues gathered to celebrate our engagement. Marcus seemed particularly handsome in his navy suit, though I noticed he appeared slightly tense despite the beautiful surroundings and gathering crowd of well-wishers. When I asked if he was nervous, he smiled and attributed any anxiety to wanting everything to be perfect for such an important evening in our lives together. His answer seemed reasonable, and I focused on greeting guests and enjoying the celebration Amanda had worked so hard to create. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia arrived early, bringing warm congratulations and expressing pride in both Marcus and me for building such a strong relationship. Marcus's parents seemed genuinely delighted with the celebration and repeatedly complimented Amanda's planning skills. The jazz quartet began playing our favorite songs and the evening felt like it was unfolding exactly as we had hoped. But as the evening progressed, I began noticing subtle changes in the atmosphere that I couldn't quite identify or understand. Parts 2 Might 5. The betrayal unfolds. The first sign something was wrong came during the cocktail hour. I was greeting Marcus's colleagues from Mountain West Financial when I noticed Amanda and Marcus standing unusually close near the bar, their heads bent together in what appeared to be an intense conversation. Amanda's hand rested on his forearm as she spoke, and Marcus was nodding with the kind of focused attention he usually reserved for important client meetings. When I approached them, they stepped apart quickly, and Amanda's bright smile seemed forced as she complimented my dress. Marcus explained they had been discussing seating arrangements for dinner, but something in his tone felt rehearsed. Amanda chimed in about a last-minute change needed for Uncle Robert's table, but her explanation seemed unnecessarily detailed for such a simple adjustment. I dismissed my unease as pre-party nerves and focused on mingling with guests who had traveled from out of town to celebrate with us. Nicole noticed the interaction as well. During a brief moment when we found ourselves alone near the windows overlooking downtown Denver, she quietly asked if everything was okay between Marcus and Amanda. Her question surprised me because I hadn't realized anyone else had observed their behavior. I assured her that Amanda had simply been coordinating logistics, but Nicole's concerned expression suggested she had seen something I was choosing to ignore. The jazz quartet began playing more romantic selections as dinner service commenced. Marcus and I took our places at the head table, flanked by our immediate family and closest friends. Amanda sat directly across from us with David, positioning her in my direct line of sight throughout the meal. I found myself watching her interactions with Marcus more carefully, noticing subtle gestures and shared glances that seemed to carry meaning beyond ordinary conversation. During the first course, Amanda repeatedly engaged Marcus in discussions about financial markets and investment strategies. Her questions demonstrated surprisingly sophisticated knowledge of his work, considering she had never shown much interest in finance beyond her real estate transactions. Marcus responded with enthusiasm, clearly enjoying the opportunity to discuss complex concepts with someone who understood their implications. Their conversation flowed with an ease that made me feel like an observer rather than a participant in my own engagement dinner. David seemed oblivious to the dynamic developing between his wife and my fiancé. He chatted comfortably with Uncle Robert about golf and mentioned how much he enjoyed his friendship with Marcus. His casual references to their regular activities together made me realize how much closer Marcus had become to my family during my Seattle assignment. I had been grateful for these developing relationships, but now they felt different somehow, like connections that excluded me rather than welcomed me home. The turning point came during the toasts. Uncle Robert spoke beautifully about watching me grow from a determined little girl into a successful professional woman, expressing his confidence that Marcus and I would build a strong marriage based on shared values and mutual respect. Marcus's parents offered warm words about welcoming me into their family and their excitement about the future we were creating together. Several colleagues and friends shared amusing stories about our courtship and their observations about our compatibility. When Amanda rose to speak as my sister, the room fell quiet with anticipation. She began with childhood memories, describing me as the practical, ambitious younger sister who always worked harder than everyone else to achieve her goals. Her words were affectionate but carried subtle undertones that made me uncomfortable. She talked about my dedication to my career and my tendency to prioritize professional success over personal relationships, painting a picture of someone who might be difficult to love consistently. Then Amanda shifted her focus to Marcus, describing him as patient, understanding, and emotionally generous in ways that complemented my more driven personality. She spoke about getting to know him during my absence and being impressed by his loyalty, his emotional intelligence, and his commitment to supporting the people he cared about. Her voice carried warmth that went beyond sisterly appreciation, and I noticed several guests exchanging glances as they picked up on the subtext of her remarks. Marcus appeared uncomfortable during Amanda's toast, shifting in his chair and avoiding direct eye contact with me. When she concluded by wishing us happiness while acknowledging that love sometimes takes unexpected directions, the applause felt polite rather than enthusiastic. I forced a smile and thanked her, but her words had created an atmosphere of tension that settled over our table like fog. The dancing began after dinner, with Marcus and me taking the floor for our first dance as an engaged couple. We had chosen At Last by Etta James, a song that held special meaning from our early courtship. As we moved together, Marcus felt stiff and distracted, going through the motions without the natural rhythm we usually shared. He kept glancing toward the head table where Amanda sat, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Other couples joined us on the dance floor, and the mood gradually lightened as people relaxed into celebration mode. I danced with Uncle Robert, Marcus's father, and several colleagues, receiving congratulations and well wishes that helped restore my confidence in the evening. When David asked Amanda to dance, I noticed she declined, claiming her shoes were bothering her. She remained seated, nursing a glass of wine and observing the festivities with detached interest. Nicole pulled me aside during a break between songs, expressing concern about the strange energy she was sensing. She mentioned overhearing Amanda make comments to other guests about how difficult it must be for Marcus to date someone whose career required such extensive travel. These remarks troubled Nicole because they seemed designed to plant seeds of doubt about our relationship's viability rather than celebrate our engagement. I tried to dismiss Nicole's concerns as misinterpretation, but I was beginning to notice patterns that supported her observations. Amanda had positioned herself strategically throughout the evening to maximize her interactions with Marcus while creating subtle barriers to our normal couple dynamics. When guests approached to congratulate us, she often intercepted conversations, redirecting attention to her own observations about our relationship or Marcus's admirable qualities as a partner. The situation reached a crisis point during the final hour of the party. Most guests had moved to the bar area for continued socializing, creating a more relaxed atmosphere with smaller conversation groups. Marcus had been talking with his colleagues near the windows when Amanda approached him with 2 glasses of wine. She guided him toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, initiating what appeared to be a serious conversation. From across the room, I watched their body language become increasingly intimate. Amanda's hand rested on Marcus's chest as she spoke, and he was leaning closer to hear her over the music. Their interaction had the intensity of people sharing secrets or making important decisions together. When Amanda laughed at
Something Marcus said, her whole body moved toward him in a way that crossed boundaries between appropriate and inappropriate behavior. I started moving toward them, but Nicole caught my arm, suggesting I observe a bit longer before intervening. Her instinct proved correct, because what happened next would have been even more devastating if I had been standing beside them. The jazz quartet began playing The Way You Look Tonight, another song from Marcus's and my romantic playlist, and Amanda looked up at him with an expression of longing that was unmistakable. Marcus hesitated for only a moment before taking Amanda's hand and leading her onto the dance floor. They moved together with natural chemistry that made my chest tighten with recognition and disbelief. This wasn't the polite dancing of in-laws or family friends. Their connection was electric, intimate, and completely inappropriate for my engagement party. Amanda's head rested against Marcus's shoulder as they swayed to music that belonged to him and me. The conversation in the ballroom gradually diminished as other guests began noticing the scene unfolding on the dance floor. Marcus and Amanda seemed oblivious to the attention they were attracting, lost in their own world of connection and chemistry. When the song ended, they remained in each other's arms for several seconds longer than appropriate, and Amanda looked up at Marcus with obvious affection before they finally separated. I stood frozen near the head table, unable to process what I had witnessed. The man I was planning to marry had just shared an intimate dance with my sister at our engagement party in front of our families and friends, with no apparent concern for how their behavior might affect me. The betrayal felt surreal, like watching actors perform a scene from someone else's life rather than experiencing my own reality. Nicole appeared beside me, her face pale with shock and anger on my behalf. She had witnessed the entire interaction and confirmed that my perceptions were accurate rather than jealous misinterpretation. Other guests were beginning to whisper among themselves, creating an undercurrent of awkwardness that threatened to overwhelm the celebration entirely. Uncle Robert approached with concern evident in his expression, asking if I was feeling all right. Marcus and Amanda returned to the head table area, both appearing slightly flushed and energized in ways that made their inappropriate connection even more obvious. Marcus avoided making direct eye contact with me, while Amanda seemed almost defiant, as if daring me to confront what had just occurred. The tension between the three of us created a bubble of discomfort that other guests could sense even if they didn't understand its source. I excused myself to the ladies' room, needing space to collect my thoughts and decide how to handle the situation. In the mirror, I looked pale and shaken, my carefully applied makeup unable to hide the shock and hurt that were overwhelming my system. Nicole followed me, offering support and validating that what I had witnessed was indeed inappropriate and hurtful. She encouraged me to confront the situation directly rather than pretending nothing had happened. When I returned to the ballroom, I found Marcus and Amanda standing together near the bar, engaged in another intense conversation. Their body language suggested they were making plans or discussing something important that involved both of them. David had joined Uncle Robert and was asking questions about their conversation, clearly sensing that something was wrong despite not understanding the specifics. I approached Marcus and Amanda directly, my voice steady despite the turmoil I was feeling inside. I asked to speak with Marcus privately, suggesting we step outside onto the hotel's terrace for fresh air and privacy. Amanda immediately volunteered to join us, claiming concern for my apparent distress, but I firmly declined her offer and insisted on speaking with my fiancé alone. Marcus reluctantly followed me outside, where the cool September air provided stark contrast to the heated emotions inside the ballroom. The Denver skyline stretched before us, beautiful and familiar, but nothing felt normal or comfortable in that moment. I asked Marcus directly what was happening between him and Amanda, whether I had misinterpreted their interactions or if something inappropriate was developing between them. His response shattered any remaining hope that I had misunderstood the situation. Marcus confirmed that he and Amanda had developed feelings for each other during my absence in Seattle. He described their connection as unexpected but undeniable, claiming they had tried to resist their attraction out of respect for me but had ultimately failed to maintain appropriate boundaries. His words were carefully chosen, as if he had rehearsed this conversation multiple times before delivering it. Marcus explained that Amanda had been instrumental in helping him realize that our relationship, while comfortable and practical, lacked the passionate connection he needed for a lifetime commitment. She had helped him understand that settling for companionate love, rather than pursuing true romantic chemistry, would be unfair to both of us in the long run. His justifications felt like prepared arguments designed to minimize his responsibility for the betrayal. The cruelest part of his explanation was the suggestion that my career focus and extended absence had created distance between us that allowed him to see our relationship more clearly. According to Marcus, my dedication to professional advancement demonstrated that I prioritized career success over emotional intimacy, making me unsuitable for the kind of marriage he wanted to create. Amanda, in contrast, had shown him what it felt like to be with someone who prioritized relationships over professional ambition. I listened to his words with growing disbelief and anger. The man I had planned to marry was blaming me for his infidelity, suggesting that my professional success and temporary work assignment had somehow justified his decision to pursue my sister. His lack of accountability for his own choices and his willingness to blame my character for his betrayal revealed aspects of his personality I had never seen before. When I asked about the timing of their relationship, Marcus admitted they had been involved for approximately 6 weeks, since shortly after Amanda had volunteered to help with party planning. Their coordination meetings had evolved into personal conversations, which had led to emotional intimacy, which had eventually become physical involvement. The engagement party we were currently celebrating had been planned and executed by 2 people who were having an affair behind my back. The realization that my own engagement party had been orchestrated by my cheating fiancé and my betraying sister felt like a level of cruelty I couldn't have imagined. Every detail Amanda had coordinated, every vendor she had selected, every timeline she had created had been part of an elaborate deception designed to humiliate me in front of everyone important to both our personal and professional lives. The evening I had anticipated as a celebration of love and commitment had become a public display of my own naivety and their betrayal. Marcus continued talking, explaining that he and Amanda had decided to be honest about their feelings rather than continuing to deceive me. According to his version of events, they were planning to tell me privately after the party, but their connection had become too strong to hide during the evening's festivities. He presented their public display of affection as evidence of their authenticity rather than acknowledgement of their cruel disregard for my feelings. When I asked about our relationship, our shared plans, and the life we had been building together, Marcus dismissed these concerns as obstacles to overcome rather than commitments to honor. He suggested that ending our engagement now would be better than proceeding with a marriage based on companionate love rather than passionate connection. His casual dismissal of our 2-year relationship and shared future plans demonstrated a level of emotional callousness that shocked me completely. The conversation concluded with Marcus removing his boutonniere and placing it on the terrace railing, a symbolic gesture that felt unnecessarily dramatic given the circumstances. He explained that he would be leaving the party with Amanda to begin their relationship honestly rather than continuing the deception any longer. His assumption that I would simply accept this arrangement and allow them to continue their celebration while I dealt with the aftermath alone revealed breathtaking selfishness. I returned to the ballroom alone, my engagement ring still on my finger, but my relationship effectively ended. The remaining guests could sense that something significant had occurred, and conversations gradually faded as people noticed my obvious distress and Marcus's absence. Amanda was nowhere to be seen, having apparently left during our terrace conversation to avoid facing me directly after her betrayal had been exposed. Uncle Robert approached immediately, offering support and asking what had happened. Nicole appeared beside him, ready to provide whatever assistance I needed to navigate the remainder of the evening. David looked confused and concerned, clearly unaware that his wife had just ended my engagement by stealing my fiancé at my own party. The surreal nature of the situation made it difficult to formulate appropriate responses to their questions and offers of help. I briefly explained that Marcus and I had ended our engagement due to irreconcilable differences, a sanitized version of events that protected everyone from the full scope of the betrayal. Uncle Robert's expression suggested he suspected more complicated circumstances, but he respected my privacy while ensuring I had the support I needed. Nicole immediately began coordinating with hotel staff to end the party gracefully without creating additional drama or embarrassment. The remaining hour passed in a blur of polite conversations, gracious thank yous to vendors, and careful management of guests who were confused by the sudden change in atmosphere. Several people asked about Marcus's whereabouts, and I provided vague explanations about him feeling unwell and needing to leave early. Nicole fielded questions about whether the engagement was still valid, deflecting inquiries with diplomatic responses that preserved my dignity. As the evening finally concluded and guests began departing, I stood in the empty ballroom surrounded by the beautiful decorations Amanda had selected to celebrate a relationship she had already destroyed. The irony of the situation felt overwhelming. Every flower arrangement, every lighting choice, every carefully planned detail had been chosen by someone who was secretly undermining the very relationship we were supposedly celebrating. The ride home to my apartment felt surreal, sitting alone in the back of an Uber while processing the complete destruction of my romantic relationship and family trust in a single evening. Nicole accompanied me, providing quiet support without attempting to offer premature solutions or optimistic perspectives about future possibilities. Her presence helped anchor me to reality during what felt like an out-of-body experience. My apartment looked exactly as I had left it that morning, with engagement party preparation materials scattered across my dining table and the silver shoes I had decided not to wear still sitting by my bedroom door. The ordinary details of my pre-party routine felt like artifacts from a different lifetime, evidence of a version of myself who had trusted in love and family loyalty that no longer existed. The full scope of the betrayal continued to unfold as I replayed conversations and interactions from recent weeks with new understanding of their true meaning. Marcus's questions about my Seattle colleagues and professional relationships took on different significance when viewed as intelligence gathering for his developing relationship with Amanda. Amanda's enthusiasm about party planning became evidence of her manipulation rather than sisterly support.
Sleep proved impossible despite my emotional and physical exhaustion. I spent the night reviewing text messages, emails, and phone calls from recent months, searching for clues I had missed about the developing relationship between Marcus and Amanda. Their deception had been thorough and sophisticated, requiring coordination and planning that demonstrated considerable investment in their affair rather than impulsive attraction they couldn't control. The morning after my engagement party, I woke up single, betrayed by both my fiancé and my sister, facing the necessity of explaining the situation to friends, family members, and colleagues who had witnessed the celebration. The practical implications felt overwhelming. Vendor contracts needed to be cancelled, wedding planning needed to be halted, and a professional network needed to be informed about changed relationship status without revealing humiliating details. Nicole had stayed overnight on my couch, providing presence and support without intrusive conversation or advice. She made coffee and toast, handling basic necessities, while I struggled to formulate plans for moving forward. Her friendship felt like the only reliable constant in a world where romantic love and family loyalty had proven unreliable and conditional. The first priority was retrieving my grandmother's engagement ring, which I had removed and left on my bedroom dresser before falling into fitful sleep. The ring represented family history and legacy that transcended my failed relationship with Marcus. Returning it to Uncle Robert for safekeeping seemed appropriate, ensuring it would remain available for future generations rather than carrying painful associations with betrayal and broken trust. By mid-morning, I had received several text messages from well-meaning friends asking about Marcus's early departure and whether everything was okay with our relationship. Crafting appropriate responses required careful balance between honesty and privacy, acknowledging changed circumstances without providing details that would become gossip or cause additional embarrassment for anyone involved. The most difficult conversation would be with Uncle Robert, who had served as father figure since my parents' death and deserved honest explanation about what had occurred. His emotional investment in my happiness and his protective instincts regarding my well-being meant he would be hurt and angry about Amanda's and Marcus's behavior. Managing his reaction while processing my own emotions would require energy I wasn't sure I possessed. Amanda had sent no messages of explanation, apology, or acknowledgement about her role in destroying my engagement. Her silence felt like additional betrayal, suggesting she felt no remorse about her actions or concern for their impact on our relationship as sisters. The absence of communication implied she was focused on her new relationship with Marcus rather than addressing the damage she had caused to our family. Marcus had also remained silent, apparently content to allow our relationship to end without further discussion or explanation beyond his terrace speech about passionate versus companionate love. His willingness to abandon 2 years of shared history and future plans without attempting reconciliation or repair demonstrated character flaws I had somehow missed during our courtship. The man I thought I knew had revealed himself to be someone entirely different when faced with temptation and difficult choices. Part 6 My Nin, Investigation and Discovery. 3 days after the engagement party disaster, I was sitting in my apartment staring at vendor cancellation emails when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The caller identified herself as Agent Rachel Martinez with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, asking if I could meet her that afternoon at a downtown cafe to discuss a matter of national security involving people close to me. Her professional tone and specific request for discretion immediately heightened my anxiety about what additional chaos might be entering my already devastated life. Agent Martinez suggested meeting at Café Sol on 16th Street Mall, a busy location where our conversation would blend into normal downtown foot traffic. Her choice of venue and emphasis on appearing casual raised questions about why federal law enforcement wanted to speak with me and whether this meeting related to my professional work or personal circumstances. Given recent events, I couldn't imagine what federal interest might exist in my marketing career or failed relationship. I arrived early, choosing a corner table with clear sight lines to both entrances while trying to appear like any other downtown professional grabbing afternoon coffee. Agent Martinez appeared precisely on time, a composed woman in her 40s wearing a navy business suit that could have belonged to any lawyer or financial advisor in the area.
Her professional appearance helped calm my nerves, while her direct manner of introduction confirmed this wasn't a social conversation. After showing federal credentials and establishing her identity, Agent Martinez explained that she needed to discuss my recent relationship with Marcus Thompson and my sister Amanda Parker Wells in connection with an ongoing federal investigation into financial crimes. Her mention of both Marcus and Amanda immediately triggered alarm about what additional deceptions might be unfolding beyond their personal betrayal. The scope of federal interests suggested problems much larger than romantic infidelity. Agent Martinez began by asking detailed questions about my knowledge of Marcus's professional activities, his client relationships, and any unusual financial discussions we might have had during our courtship. Her inquiries focused particularly on whether Marcus had ever mentioned specific clients, investment strategies, or business transactions that seemed outside normal financial advisor protocols. I explained that Marcus typically maintained professional confidentiality about client matters and rarely discussed specific business details. The questions about Amanda centered on her real estate activities, particularly any luxury property transactions she might have mentioned, and whether she had described unusually cash-heavy deals or clients with unclear funding sources. Agent Martinez asked about Amanda's professional network, her recent income levels, and any lifestyle changes I might have noticed during the past year. I realized I had little detailed knowledge about either Marcus or Amanda's day-to-day work activities, despite close relationships with both. Agent Martinez then revealed information that completely recontextualized everything I thought I understood about recent events. According to federal investigators, Marcus Thompson was not actually employed by Mountain West Financial Group as a traditional financial advisor. His real identity was Marcus Chen, an undercover FBI agent specializing in financial crimes investigations. For the past 18 months, he had been working to infiltrate a money laundering operation that used Denver's luxury real estate market to clean proceeds from various illegal activities. The revelation that my fiancé was an undercover federal agent rather than a financial advisor felt surreal beyond comprehension. Agent Martinez explained that Marcus's assignment required him to establish credible cover identity within Denver's professional community, develop relationships that would provide access to potential criminal networks, and gather evidence about money laundering schemes without arousing suspicion from targets under investigation. My relationship with Marcus had originally been genuine, according to Agent Martinez, but it had become complicated when investigators identified my sister Amanda as potentially connected to the criminal network they were targeting. Amanda's luxury real estate business had processed several transactions that displayed patterns consistent with money laundering activities, though investigators believed she was likely an unwitting participant rather than knowing criminal conspirator. The federal investigation had reached a critical phase approximately 2 months ago when evidence suggested criminal targets were becoming suspicious about law enforcement interest in their activities. At that point, Marcus's supervisors had instructed him to deepen his cover by strengthening connections to potential suspects, including developing closer relationships with Amanda Parker Wells and her professional network within Denver's luxury real estate community. Agent Martinez carefully explained that Marcus's romantic involvement with Amanda had been orchestrated as part of his undercover assignment rather than genuine personal betrayal. His instructions required him to gain Amanda's trust and romantic interest to access information about her client relationships and recent property transactions. The affair I had witnessed at my engagement party was essentially performance art designed to convince criminal targets that Marcus was legitimately integrating into their social and professional circles. The federal operation required Marcus to maintain his cover identity even at significant personal cost, including the destruction of our relationship and the appearance of betraying my trust. Agent Martinez emphasized that Marcus had specifically requested permission to inform me about his real identity and assignment, but his supervisors had determined that revealing the truth would compromise operational security and potentially endanger both him and me. According to Agent Martinez, the engagement party had served multiple purposes for the federal investigation. It provided Marcus with legitimate opportunity to interact extensively with Amanda's social and professional network, including several individuals who were targets of the money laundering investigation.
The event also established credible romantic connection between Marcus and Amanda that would justify his increased presence in her life and access to her business activities. My anger about the betrayal was initially intensified by learning it had been orchestrated deception rather than genuine emotional infidelity. The idea that my relationship had been sacrificed for federal law enforcement purposes felt like violation beyond personal betrayal. Agent Martinez acknowledged the ethical complexity of the situation while emphasizing the importance of the criminal investigation and the need to protect ongoing operations. She explained that several criminal targets had attended our engagement party, using the social event to conduct business meetings and financial discussions they assumed would be unmonitored by law enforcement. Federal surveillance teams had recorded numerous conversations during the evening that provided crucial evidence about money laundering operations and criminal network structures. My humiliation had apparently served important law enforcement purposes. The money laundering scheme involved using luxury real estate purchases to convert illegal proceeds into legitimate assets. Criminal organizations would approach real estate agents with cash buyers interested in expensive properties, often paying significantly above market value to expedite transactions. The excess payments and cash-heavy deals created opportunities to move large amounts of illegal money through legitimate real estate channels. Amanda's involvement appeared to be unwitting participation rather than criminal conspiracy. Her success with luxury real estate had made her attractive to money laundering operations because legitimate agents provided necessary cover for suspicious transactions. Criminal organizations preferred working with honest professionals who would process paperwork correctly and maintain appropriate records without understanding the true source of their clients' funds. Federal investigators had identified at least 6 recent transactions processed by Amanda that displayed money laundering characteristics, involving cash payments totaling over $3 million. The clients involved in these transactions were connected to various criminal enterprises, including drug trafficking, human smuggling, and organized theft operations. Amanda's commission income from these deals had been substantial, though investigators believed she was unaware of the illegal source. Agent Martinez revealed that Marcus's assignment included gathering evidence about Amanda's knowledge of her client's criminal activities and whether she was consciously participating in money laundering schemes or simply processing transactions without asking appropriate questions. His romantic involvement with her provided access to information about her business practices, client relationships, and awareness of suspicious patterns. The federal investigation had reached the point where arrests were imminent, but investigators needed to ensure they had complete evidence about the criminal network structure and could prove knowing participation versus unwitting involvement for various individuals. Marcus's relationship with Amanda had provided crucial insight into how criminal organizations recruited legitimate professionals and whether those professionals understood the true nature of their participation. Agent Martinez explained that my cooperation was now essential for several reasons. First, investigators needed to understand whether Amanda had shared information about her suspicious clients or unusual transactions that might indicate her awareness of criminal activity. Second, they required detailed timeline about when Amanda and Marcus had begun their relationship to establish credibility of their romantic cover. Third, they needed my assistance in maintaining operational security until arrests could be executed. The request for cooperation felt overwhelming given my emotional state and sense of betrayal about how federal law enforcement had destroyed my personal life for investigative purposes. Agent Martinez acknowledged the ethical problems with their approach while emphasizing the importance of dismantling criminal networks that cause significant harm to communities through drug trafficking and other illegal activities. She revealed that federal investigators had been monitoring my communications and activities throughout Marcus's assignment to ensure my safety and evaluate whether criminal targets might attempt to approach me directly. This surveillance had extended to my Seattle business trip, where federal agents had maintained protective oversight without my knowledge or consent. The violation of privacy felt like another layer of betrayal by institutions I had trusted. Agent Martinez provided documentation proving Marcus's real identity as FBI Agent Marcus Chen, including service record and assignment details that confirmed his legitimate law enforcement status.
She showed photographs from surveillance operations and transcripts of recorded conversations that demonstrated the scope of criminal activity they were investigating. The evidence made clear that federal interest in Amanda's activities was justified by legitimate criminal concerns. The timeline Agent Martinez presented revealed that Marcus had been instructed to begin developing romantic interest in Amanda approximately
8 weeks before my engagement party, coinciding with when investigators determined criminal targets were becoming suspicious about law enforcement interest. His assignment required him to convince both Amanda and criminal observers that his interest in her was genuine emotional attraction rather than professional necessity. Federal surveillance had recorded numerous conversations between Amanda and her suspicious clients during the period when she was developing feelings for Marcus. These recordings provided evidence about how criminal organizations evaluated potential money laundering partners and whether Amanda was asking appropriate questions about funding sources. The evidence suggested she was primarily focused on commission opportunities rather than investigating client backgrounds. Agent Martinez explained that Marcus's emotional conflict about his assignment had been genuine, despite professional necessity of maintaining cover identity. He had repeatedly requested permission to reveal his true identity to me and had proposed alternative approaches that might preserve our relationship while maintaining operational effectiveness. His supervisors had determined that any deviation from assignment parameters would compromise investigation integrity. The federal operation was scheduled to conclude within the next 10 days with coordinated arrests of multiple criminal targets across several states. Marcus's testimony would be essential for proving money laundering charges, and Amanda's cooperation would be crucial for understanding how criminal organizations recruited legitimate business professionals. My assistance could help ensure successful prosecution while potentially protecting Amanda from serious criminal charges. Agent Martinez outlined several options for my involvement in the remaining investigation phase. I could provide voluntary cooperation by sharing information about Amanda's recent behavior and business activities, potentially helping investigators understand her level of awareness about client criminality. Alternatively, I could decline involvement and allow federal investigators to proceed without my assistance, though this approach might limit their ability to distinguish between knowing and unknowing participation. The decision about cooperation carried significant implications for Amanda's legal situation. Federal prosecutors were prepared to offer immunity or reduce charges for individuals who provided substantial assistance with dismantling criminal networks. Amanda's cooperation could result in probation and community service rather than federal prison time, but her willingness to assist investigators would depend partly on family support and encouragement from people she trusted. Agent Martinez emphasized that my safety remained a priority regardless of my cooperation decision. Federal agents would maintain protective surveillance until arrests were completed and criminal targets were in custody. However, she noted that my relationship with both Marcus and Amanda made me a person of interest for criminal organizations who might attempt to use personal connections to gain information about law enforcement activities. The meeting concluded with Agent Martinez providing contact information and requesting a decision about cooperation within 48 hours. She emphasized the time-sensitive nature of the investigation and the importance of maintaining operational security until arrests could be executed. Her professional demeanor never wavered, but I sensed genuine concern about the personal cost federal operations had imposed on my life. Walking back to my apartment after the meeting, I struggled to process the revelation that my romantic betrayal had been elaborate federal deception designed to protect national security interests. The emotional complexity of learning that Marcus's infidelity was professional performance rather than personal choice created confusion about how to feel about recent events. Part of me felt relieved that our relationship hadn't failed due to my inadequacies, while another part felt violated by institutional manipulation. The implications for my relationship with Amanda were equally complicated. If she was unknowingly involved in criminal activity, then her affair with Marcus might have been manipulation by criminal organizations seeking to compromise law enforcement operations.
Alternatively, if she was consciously participating in money laundering schemes, then her romantic involvement with an undercover agent might have been her own attempt to gain information about federal investigations. Nicole was waiting in my apartment when I returned, having used her spare key to check on my well-being. Her presence provided needed emotional support as I processed Agent Martinez's revelations and considered the cooperation decision. Nicole's background in sustainable architecture gave her analytical perspective that helped me evaluate the ethical and practical implications of federal involvement in my personal life. I shared the basic outline of Agent Martinez's explanation without revealing specific operational details that might compromise investigation security. Nicole's reaction mirrored my own confusion about whether to feel relieved or violated by learning that Marcus's betrayal had been professional performance. She helped me recognize that regardless of motivation, the emotional trauma of public humiliation and relationship destruction remained valid regardless of underlying federal purposes. The question of cooperation required careful consideration of multiple factors, including Amanda's potential legal jeopardy, my own safety concerns, and the broader public interest in dismantling criminal organizations. Nicole encouraged me to seek legal advice before making decisions that might have long-term implications for my relationship with law enforcement agencies and potential involvement in federal prosecutions. That evening, I called Uncle Robert to discuss the situation without revealing specific details about ongoing federal operations. His experience as a retired corporate executive provided valuable perspective about institutional decision-making and the importance of protecting personal interests while considering broader responsibilities. He encouraged me to prioritize my own well-being while recognizing that cooperation might help protect Amanda from more serious legal consequences. Sleep proved difficult as I processed the day's revelations and considered decision options. The discovery that Marcus was an undercover federal agent rather than unfaithful fiancé created cognitive dissonance about recent events and raised questions about whether any aspect of our relationship had been genuine. Agent Martinez had suggested his initial feelings were authentic, but professional requirements had ultimately transformed personal connection into investigative tool. The following morning brought additional perspective as I researched federal cooperation agreements and consulted with attorney Michael Davidson about legal implications of various decision options. Attorney Davidson emphasized the importance of protecting my own interests while considering potential benefits of cooperation for Amanda's legal situation. He recommended requesting immunity for any information I might provide and ensuring clear boundaries about ongoing involvement. Agent Martinez called that afternoon to check on my decision timeline and address any questions about cooperation parameters. Her follow-up demonstrated federal commitment to maintaining communication while respecting my autonomy about participation. She clarified that cooperation would primarily involve sharing observations about Amanda's recent behavior and business activities rather than active participation in ongoing operations. The decision ultimately came down to whether helping federal investigators might protect Amanda from serious criminal consequences while contributing to legitimate law enforcement objectives. Despite my anger about institutional manipulation of my personal life, I recognized that cooperation might represent the best available option for minimizing damage to family relationships while supporting important criminal justice goals. I contacted Agent Martinez that evening to confirm my willingness to provide voluntary cooperation within clearly defined parameters. My decision was motivated primarily by concern for Amanda's welfare rather than enthusiasm for federal law enforcement, but I recognized that refusing assistance might result in worse outcomes for everyone involved. The cooperation agreement would require careful navigation to protect my own interests while supporting investigation objectives. The final resolution, my cooperation with Agent Martinez, began with detailed debriefing sessions about Amanda's behavior patterns over the past 6 months. Federal investigators needed comprehensive timeline of changes in her lifestyle, professional activities, and social connections that might indicate awareness of criminal involvement. I provided information about her increased income, luxury purchases, and references to high-paying clients without understanding the full implications of what I was revealing. The debriefing process required me to reconstruct conversations with Amanda about her real estate business, focusing particularly on any mentions of unusual client requests, cash transactions, or pressure to expedite closings. Agent Martinez was especially interested in whether Amanda had expressed concerns about client backgrounds or questioned funding sources for expensive property purchases. My recollections suggested Amanda had been primarily focused on commission opportunities rather than investigating client legitimacy. Within a week of my initial cooperation agreement, federal agents executed coordinated arrests across Denver, Phoenix, and Las Vegas targeting the money laundering network Amanda had unknowingly assisted. The operation resulted in seizure of over $12 million in assets and arrests of 15 individuals connected to various criminal enterprises. Amanda was not among those arrested, though she was required to surrender her real estate license pending investigation resolution. Agent Martinez contacted me immediately after the arrests to explain Amanda's legal status and outline next steps for family communication. Amanda had been classified as cooperating witness rather than criminal defendant, meaning she would face administrative penalties rather than federal charges in exchange for providing testimony about her client relationships and business practices. Her cooperation would be essential for proving criminal intent among actual money laundering conspirators. The first conversation with Amanda after learning about the federal operation was surreal beyond description. She called me crying, explaining that FBI agents had appeared at her real estate office with search warrants and evidence about criminal activities involving several of her recent clients. Her shock appeared genuine, suggesting she had been genuinely unaware of the illegal source of funds she had been helping to launder through luxury property transactions. Amanda's emotional state during this conversation convinced me that her involvement had indeed been unwitting rather than criminal conspiracy. Her distress about discovering she had facilitated money laundering operations seemed authentic, and her questions about legal implications demonstrated confusion rather than sophisticated understanding of criminal processes. The sister I had grown up with was finally visible beneath the polished professional facade she had maintained. Most importantly, Amanda revealed that her relationship with Marcus had begun when he approached her offering assistance with a difficult client situation. According to her account, Marcus had presented himself as someone with expertise in complex financial arrangements who could help her navigate unusual client requirements. Her romantic feelings had developed from gratitude and professional admiration rather than physical attraction or emotional connection. This revelation recontextualized their affair as manipulation by Marcus rather than genuine betrayal by Amanda. While her behavior at my engagement party remained hurtful and inappropriate, understanding that Marcus had orchestrated their relationship as part of federal assignment changed the fundamental nature of her betrayal. She had been targeted and manipulated by law enforcement rather than independently choosing to pursue my fiancé. Amanda apologized extensively for her behavior at the engagement party and her failure to communicate about her relationship with Marcus. She explained that Marcus had convinced her to keep their involvement secret until after my party to avoid family drama, claiming they would reveal their relationship gradually to minimize hurt feelings. His manipulation had prevented her from recognizing how cruel their public display would appear to me and other guests. The conversation also revealed that Marcus had asked detailed questions about my Seattle assignment, my professional relationships, and my future career plans. Amanda had interpreted his interest as concern for my well-being and desire to understand my priorities, but federal agents later confirmed he was gathering intelligence about whether criminal targets might attempt to approach me directly to compromise his investigation. Understanding Marcus's true motivation for our relationship required extensive conversations with Agent Martinez about federal protocols for undercover operations and agent safety procedures. She explained that Marcus's initial attraction to me had been genuine, but his assignment had required him to prioritize investigation objectives over personal relationships when conflicts arose. His emotional struggle with these competing loyalties had been documented in operational reports. Agent Martinez revealed that Marcus had submitted multiple requests to modify his assignment to preserve our relationship, proposing alternative approaches that might maintain investigation effectiveness while avoiding personal betrayal. His supervisors had determined that any deviation from established protocols would compromise operational security and potentially endanger both agent safety and investigation success. The federal operation had been more complex than initially apparent, involving coordination with international law enforcement agencies tracking money laundering networks across multiple countries. Marcus's assignment was part of larger effort to dismantle criminal organizations using American real estate markets to clean proceeds from drug trafficking, human smuggling, and arms dealing. The scope of criminal activity justified extreme measures to gather evidence and protect investigation integrity. Marcus's cover identity had been maintained for over 2 years, requiring him to establish credible professional reputation and social connections within Denver's financial community. His relationship with me had provided valuable legitimacy to his cover while potentially creating personal complications that supervisors had carefully monitored. Federal agents had evaluated whether criminal targets might use our relationship to compromise his effectiveness. The engagement party had served as crucial intelligence gathering opportunity, allowing federal surveillance teams to record conversations between criminal targets who assumed social event provided secure environment for business discussions. Multiple prosecutions would rely on evidence gathered during our celebration, making my humiliation instrumental to significant criminal justice achievements. This knowledge created complex feelings about whether personal sacrifice had served greater good. Agent Martinez arranged for me to meet with Marcus after arrests were completed and his cover identity was no longer necessary. The conversation took place at FBI field office in downtown Denver, with Agent Martinez present to ensure appropriate boundaries were maintained. Seeing Marcus again after learning about his true identity created emotional confusion about how to process our relationship and its ending. Marcus began by apologizing for the deception and acknowledging the personal cost his assignment had imposed on my life. He confirmed that his initial feelings for me had been genuine and that maintaining his cover had required him to act against his personal values and emotional instincts. His distress about betraying my trust appeared authentic, though professional necessity had ultimately overridden personal considerations. He revealed that ending our relationship had been among the most difficult aspects of his assignment, particularly because he had hoped to find alternative approaches that might preserve our connection while maintaining investigation effectiveness. His supervisors had ultimately determined that complete separation was necessary to protect both operational security and my personal safety from potential criminal retaliation. Marcus explained that his relationship with Amanda had been purely professional performance, designed to gain access to information about her client network and business practices. He had never experienced genuine romantic feelings for her, though maintaining credible emotional connection had required convincing behavior that had unfortunately hurt both Amanda and me. His assignment had required him to prioritize investigation objectives over personal integrity. The conversation addressed practical questions about our shared history and whether any aspects of our relationship had been authentic rather than professional performance. Marcus confirmed that his initial attraction, our early courtship experiences, and his proposal had reflected genuine feelings rather than assignment requirements. The transformation to professional deception had occurred only after Amanda was identified as potential connection to criminal network. Marcus also revealed that federal agents had maintained protective surveillance of my activities throughout his assignment, particularly during my Seattle business trip when criminal targets might have attempted to approach me directly. This protection had been implemented without my knowledge to maintain operational security while ensuring my safety from potential criminal retaliation. Understanding that our relationship had been sacrificed for legitimate law enforcement purposes rather than personal betrayal created different kind of closure than I had expected. While institutional manipulation of my personal life remained ethically problematic, recognizing that Marcus had acted under professional compulsion rather than emotional choice allowed for forgiveness that pure betrayal might not have permitted. The conversation concluded with Marcus expressing hope that someday I might understand the importance of the criminal investigation and forgive the institutional choices that had destroyed our relationship. He acknowledged that his assignment had violated fundamental trust between us and that professional necessity could not fully excuse personal betrayal, regardless of ultimate law enforcement objectives. Agent Martinez facilitated additional conversations with federal prosecutors about long-term implications of my cooperation and Amanda's testimony for ongoing criminal cases. Both Amanda and I would be required to provide depositions and potentially courtroom testimony about our observations regarding suspicious transactions and client behaviors. Our cooperation agreements included provisions for witness protection if criminal organizations attempted retaliation. The legal proceedings extended over several months as federal prosecutors built cases against money laundering network participants. Amanda's testimony proved crucial for establishing how criminal organizations recruited legitimate business professionals and whether those professionals could reasonably have recognized illegal activity. Her credible portrayal of unwitting participation helped distinguish between knowing conspirators and manipulated accomplices. My testimony focused primarily on observations about Amanda's lifestyle changes and professional activities during the period when she was processing suspicious transactions. Federal prosecutors used my perspective as neutral family member to establish timeline of her involvement and demonstrate her genuine surprise about criminal connections. This testimony helped support her classification as cooperating witness rather than criminal defendant. The trials resulted in successful convictions for 12 defendants on money laundering charges, with sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years in federal prison. Asset forfeiture proceedings recovered over $10 million in criminal proceeds, much of which was returned to communities harmed by underlying criminal activities. Amanda received probation and community service rather than prison time in recognition of her cooperation and unwitting participation. Throughout this legal process, Amanda and I gradually rebuilt our relationship on more honest foundation than had existed previously. Her experience with federal investigation had forced her to confront materialistic values and question priorities that had driven many of her professional and personal decisions. She expressed genuine remorse about behavior that had contributed to my humiliation, regardless of underlying manipulation by Marcus. Amanda decided to leave real estate industry entirely, pursuing certification as financial counselor, specializing in helping families recover from financial fraud and exploitation. Her experience with money laundering investigation had taught her about vulnerability of ordinary people to sophisticated criminal schemes, and she wanted to use this knowledge to protect others from similar exploitation. My own career path shifted as well, influenced by insights gained through federal cooperation about intersection between legitimate business and criminal activity. I accepted promotion to Vice President of Regional Operations, but also began volunteering with organizations that educate business professionals about recognizing signs of money laundering and other financial crimes. My experience had demonstrated how easily honest people could become unwitting participants in criminal schemes. The relationship with Marcus concluded definitively after completion of federal prosecutions. While understanding his professional constraints allowed for forgiveness, rebuilding romantic relationship would have required trust that institutional manipulation had permanently damaged. We agreed that his assignment had revealed fundamental incompatibilities between personal values and professional requirements that would make long-term partnership impossible. Agent Martinez remained in contact for several years after investigations concluded, occasionally requesting consultations about similar cases involving financial crimes and business professional recruitment by criminal organizations. Her professional respect for my cooperation and insights about family dynamics in federal operations led to ongoing advisory relationship that proved mutually beneficial. The resolution of federal investigation provided closure about events surrounding my engagement party, though emotional recovery required extensive therapy and personal reflection. Understanding that public humiliation had served important law enforcement purposes helped process trauma while recognizing legitimate grievances about institutional manipulation of personal relationships for professional objectives. Nicole's friendship proved invaluable throughout legal proceedings and emotional recovery process. Her outsider perspective helped me maintain balanced understanding of both federal law enforcement necessity and personal rights violations. Her support during depositions and court testimony provided stability during extended legal proceedings that required reliving traumatic experiences for criminal justice purposes. Uncle Robert's guidance also contributed significantly to navigating complex ethical questions about cooperation with federal authorities and balancing personal interests with broader community welfare. His business experience provided valuable perspective about institutional decision-making and helped me evaluate long-term implications of choices made during crisis circumstances. The experience ultimately taught important lessons about trust, institutional power, and personal resilience in face of systematic deception. While federal investigation served legitimate law enforcement purposes, methods used to gather evidence raised serious questions about consent and personal autonomy when national security objectives conflict with individual rights and relationships. Amanda and I developed stronger relationship than had existed before federal investigation, built on honest communication about personal values and professional choices rather than competitive dynamics that had previously characterized our interactions. Her transformation from materialistic real estate agent to community-focused financial counselor represented genuine growth that benefited from confronting consequences of unwitting criminal participation. My understanding of romantic relationships also evolved significantly, incorporating awareness of how external pressures and institutional requirements can influence personal choices in ways that may not reflect authentic feelings or character. This perspective proved valuable in subsequent relationships by encouraging deeper communication about professional obligations and personal boundaries. The federal investigation concluded successfully from law enforcement perspective, dismantling significant criminal organization and recovering substantial proceeds from illegal activities. However, personal costs to civilian participants in investigation raised ongoing questions about ethical boundaries for undercover operations and institutional responsibility for protecting innocent parties affected by necessary deceptions. Years later, I occasionally wonder about alternative approaches that might have achieved similar law enforcement objectives without destroying personal relationships and family trust. While recognizing legitimate needs for effective criminal investigation, I remain concerned about institutional willingness to sacrifice civilian well-being for professional convenience when other options might have been available. The experience provided valuable perspective about complexity of criminal justice system and challenges facing law enforcement agencies investigating sophisticated financial crimes. Understanding these challenges helped me appreciate difficult decisions required from agents like Marcus while maintaining legitimate concerns about methods used to gather evidence and protect ongoing operations. Amanda's successful transition to helping families affected by financial fraud represents positive outcome from traumatic experience, demonstrating how personal crisis can motivate meaningful professional and personal growth. Her work educating others about financial exploitation helps prevent similar victimization while processing her own experience with unwitting criminal participation. My career advancement and volunteer work with financial crime education represents similar positive adaptation to difficult circumstances. Using insights gained through federal cooperation to help business professionals recognize and avoid criminal manipulation provides constructive outlet for processing institutional betrayal while contributing to community protection. The resolution ultimately emphasized importance of maintaining personal integrity and authentic relationships despite external pressures that may encourage deception or manipulation. While understanding necessity of Marcus's professional choices, I learned valuable lessons about trusting instincts and maintaining clear boundaries between personal values and professional requirements in my own career and relationships. 5 years after the federal investigation concluded, I sat in my corner office at TechFlow Solutions overlooking downtown Denver, reviewing quarterly reports for our expanded operations across the western United States. The promotion to executive vice president had come with significant responsibilities and the satisfaction of building something meaningful in the marketing industry. My experience navigating complex federal investigations had provided unexpected skills for managing corporate crises and stakeholder relationships that proved invaluable in senior leadership roles. The morning routine had become comfortable and predictable in ways I deeply appreciated after years of uncertainty and institutional manipulation. Coffee from the same cafe on 17th Street, review of overnight emails from regional offices, and preparation for client meetings filled early hours with purposeful activity that felt authentically mine rather than performance for hidden audiences. Professional success built on genuine expertise and ethical decision-making provided foundation for personal satisfaction I had never experienced during my relationship with Marcus. Amanda's transformation remained one of the most remarkable outcomes of our shared ordeal with federal law enforcement. Her financial counseling practice had grown into a respected nonprofit organization, serving families affected by various forms of economic exploitation and fraud. She specialized in helping people recover from romance scams, investment fraud, and money laundering schemes that destroyed savings and relationships through sophisticated manipulation. Her personal experience with unwitting criminal participation provided credibility and empathy that traditional financial advisors often lacked. We met monthly for lunch at different downtown restaurants, maintaining sister relationship that had evolved into genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared understanding of institutional power dynamics. Amanda's marriage to David had survived the stress of federal investigation, though they had required extensive couples therapy to process the betrayal and deception that had characterized her relationship with Marcus. Their commitment to rebuilding trust on honest foundation had ultimately strengthened their partnership. Amanda often shared stories from her counseling work that reminded me of the widespread nature of financial crimes and the vulnerability of ordinary people to sophisticated criminal schemes. Her clients included elderly victims of romance scams, small business owners who had unknowingly processed illegal transactions, and professionals who had been recruited as unwitting accomplices in money laundering operations. The patterns she described demonstrated how criminal organizations systematically targeted honest people whose legitimate activities could provide cover for illegal enterprises. My volunteer work with business education organizations had expanded into consulting role with federal agencies seeking to improve their outreach to potential victims of financial crimes. The experience with Marcus's investigation had provided insights into how law enforcement operations affected civilian participants and the importance of balancing investigative necessity with protection of innocent parties. My recommendations focused on improving communication protocols and support services for people whose lives were disrupted by necessary undercover operations. The consulting work occasionally brought me into contact with other federal agents who had conducted similar investigations involving romantic manipulation and family infiltration. These conversations revealed that Marcus's assignment had been part of broader law enforcement strategy using personal relationships to gather intelligence about criminal networks. The ethical questions raised by systematic use of romantic deception remained unresolved within federal agencies, though my input had contributed to revised protocols for protecting civilian welfare during undercover operations. Marcus had left federal law enforcement shortly after our investigation concluded, accepting position with private security firms specializing in financial crimes prevention for corporate clients. Agent Martinez had mentioned his struggle with psychological effects of extended undercover work and his decision to pursue a career path that didn't require systematic deception and manipulation of innocent people. His departure from FBI suggested lasting impact of ethical conflicts between personal values and professional requirements. I had encountered Marcus once at professional conference in Phoenix, where we both attended sessions about emerging trends in financial crimes and prevention strategies. Our conversation was brief and professionally cordial, acknowledging shared experience without attempting to revisit personal history that institutional manipulation had permanently complicated. He appeared settled in his new career and expressed satisfaction with work that allowed him to combat financial crimes without compromising personal integrity. The conversation confirmed that ending our relationship had been an appropriate decision for both parties, despite circumstances that had forced rather than chosen that outcome. While understanding his professional constraints had allowed for forgiveness, rebuilding romantic partnership would have required trust that systematic institutional deception had made impossible to restore. Our brief interaction provided closure about moving forward separately while maintaining respect for shared experience with federal investigation. Nicole remained my closest friend and confidant, having witnessed the entire ordeal from engagement party disaster through federal cooperation and legal proceedings. Her architectural career had flourished in Portland, where she specialized in designing affordable housing projects that served communities affected by economic displacement and gentrification. Our friendship had deepened through shared commitment to using professional skills for positive social impact rather than purely personal advancement. Nicole visited Denver quarterly for business and personal trips, maintaining connection that had proven essential during my recovery from institutional betrayal and relationship trauma. Her outside perspective continued to provide valuable insight about personal growth and professional choices, helping me maintain balanced understanding of past events while focusing on future possibilities. Her friendship represented continuity and authenticity that had anchored me through a period of extensive deception and manipulation. Uncle Robert had retired from corporate consulting but remained active advisor for family matters and personal decisions that required experienced perspective. His guidance during federal investigation had proven invaluable, and his continued involvement in my life provided stability that had been essential for emotional recovery. He expressed pride in both Amanda's and my professional development and our ability to rebuild sister relationship on honest foundation despite traumatic circumstances. The monthly family dinners at Uncle Robert's house had become treasured tradition that brought together extended family and close friends for regular connection and support. These gatherings included Amanda and David, Nicole during her visits, and various colleagues and friends who had become chosen family over years of shared experiences. The warmth and authenticity of these relationships provided sharp contrast to institutional manipulation I had experienced during federal investigation. Dating had resumed gradually after extensive therapy and personal reflection about trust, boundaries, and institutional influences on personal relationships. The experience with Marcus had taught important lessons about evaluating potential partners' professional obligations and ensuring clear communication about external pressures that might affect relationship dynamics. I approached new romantic connections with enhanced awareness of red flags and greater emphasis on consistent behavior over impressive credentials or romantic gestures. The current relationship with James Morrison, a civil engineer who specialized in sustainable infrastructure projects, had developed slowly over 18 months with emphasis on transparent communication and shared values. His professional work focused on community benefit rather than profit maximization, and his approach to relationship building emphasized honesty and emotional availability over romantic drama or elaborate gestures. The contrast to Marcus's sophisticated manipulation provided daily reminder of authentic versus performative connection. James knew about my experience with federal investigation and had expressed respect for both my cooperation with law enforcement and my subsequent advocacy for civilian protection during undercover operations. His understanding of institutional power dynamics through his own work with government agencies provided foundation for discussions about professional ethics and personal boundaries that had been impossible during relationship with undercover federal agent. Professional recognition for my work in financial crimes education had led to speaking opportunities at industry conferences and university business programs. These presentations focused on helping professionals recognize signs of money laundering recruitment and protect themselves from unwitting participation in criminal schemes. The speaking fees contributed to scholarship fund Amanda and I had established for families affected by financial crimes, providing educational opportunities for children whose parents had been victimized by sophisticated fraud operations. The scholarship program represented positive outcome from traumatic experience, transforming personal victimization into community benefit that honored other families who had suffered similar institutional manipulation and criminal exploitation. Recipients included children of romance scam victims, families affected by business fraud, and dependents of people who had been prosecuted for unwitting participation in money laundering schemes. Their educational achievements provided ongoing motivation for continued advocacy work. My perspective on federal law enforcement had evolved into nuanced understanding that recognized both necessity of criminal investigations and legitimate concerns about methods used to gather evidence and protect operations, while supporting efforts to combat financial crimes and protect communities from criminal exploitation. I remained advocate for improved protocols that minimized harm to civilian participants and provided better support for people whose lives were disrupted by necessary undercover operations. The advocacy work had connected me with other civilians who had been affected by federal investigations involving romantic manipulation, family infiltration, and professional deception. These connections revealed widespread pattern of institutional willingness to sacrifice personal relationships for investigative convenience, often without adequate consideration of alternative approaches or long-term consequences for innocent parties. Our collective advocacy had contributed to policy discussions about ethical boundaries for undercover operations. Amanda's nonprofit organization had expanded to include support groups for families affected by federal investigations that involved deception and manipulation of personal relationships. These groups provided safe space for processing trauma associated with learning that trusted relationships had been institutional performances rather than authentic connections. The support services filled gap in existing resources for people whose victimization occurred through law enforcement activity rather than criminal behavior. The support groups served diverse population, including spouses of undercover agents, family members who had been investigated through romantic infiltration, and business professionals who had been targeted for recruitment by both criminal organizations and law enforcement agencies. Their shared experience of institutional manipulation provided foundation for healing and advocacy that traditional victim services often could not address effectively. My testimony before Congressional Subcommittee investigating federal undercover operations had contributed to recommendations for improved oversight and civilian protection protocols. The hearing provided opportunity to share personal experience while advocating for systemic changes that might prevent similar trauma for future investigation participants. The legislative process moved slowly, but my input had influenced discussions about balancing law enforcement necessity with constitutional rights and personal dignity. The congressional testimony had been emotionally challenging but professionally satisfying opportunity to transform personal trauma into potential policy improvement. Speaking publicly about institutional manipulation and its long-term effects required careful balance between supporting legitimate law enforcement needs and advocating for civilian protection. The experience demonstrated how personal experience could contribute to broader discussions about government accountability and individual rights. Financial security achieved through career advancement and settlement from civil litigation against federal agencies had provided foundation for philanthropic activities and continued education about institutional power dynamics. The settlement had acknowledged violation of personal rights during federal investigation while avoiding admission of systematic wrongdoing by law enforcement agencies. The funds supported scholarship program and advocacy work rather than personal luxury purchases. The civil litigation had been primarily symbolic rather than financial, seeking acknowledgement of harm caused by institutional manipulation and establishment of precedent for civilian protection in future undercover operations. While federal agencies had settled rather than proceeding to trial, the case had generated media attention and policy discussions that contributed to improved awareness of civilian rights during criminal investigations. Therapeutic work had continued throughout recovery process, focusing on processing institutional trauma, rebuilding capacity for trust in personal relationships, and developing advocacy skills for systemic change efforts. The therapy had addressed both immediate emotional effects of betrayal and manipulation as well as longer-term questions about institutional power, personal agency, and civic responsibility. Professional support had been essential for maintaining psychological health while engaging in advocacy work that required regular discussion of traumatic experiences. The therapeutic process had also explored questions about civic duty and personal responsibility when institutional power conflicts with individual rights and relationships. My cooperation with federal investigation had served legitimate law enforcement purposes, but methods used to secure that cooperation had violated personal autonomy and dignity in ways that raised ongoing ethical questions. Therapy had helped process these complex moral issues while maintaining commitment to both justice and personal integrity. Professional development had included additional education about organizational ethics, institutional accountability, and corporate social responsibility. The experience with federal manipulation had highlighted importance of understanding power dynamics within institutions and developing skills for navigating ethical conflicts that might arise in business contexts. This knowledge had proven valuable for senior leadership role and consulting work with organizations facing similar ethical challenges. The additional education had focused particularly on recognizing and addressing conflicts between institutional objectives and individual rights, developing communication strategies for managing stakeholder relationships during crises, and creating organizational cultures that prioritize ethical decision-making over expedient solutions. These skills had applications beyond federal law enforcement context and had enhanced my effectiveness as corporate leader and community advocate. Community involvement had expanded to include service on nonprofit boards addressing economic justice, victim rights, and government accountability. These positions provided opportunities to apply lessons learned from personal experience while contributing to systemic change efforts that might prevent similar institutional manipulation of civilian relationships. Board service also connected me with other advocates working on related issues from different professional and personal perspectives. The board work had been particularly focused on organizations serving victims of government overreach, financial crimes, and institutional betrayal. These groups provided services and advocacy for people whose victimization occurred through systematic abuse of power rather than individual criminal behavior. Their work addressed gaps in traditional victim services and contributed to policy discussions about accountability and reform. Looking toward future, I remained committed to balancing professional success with advocacy work and personal relationships that prioritize authenticity over institutional performance. The experience with federal manipulation had provided valuable lessons about maintaining personal integrity despite external pressures and recognizing the difference between legitimate professional requirements and systematic abuse of power. These insights would continue to guide decision-making in both career and personal contexts. The future goals included continued expansion of TechFlow's operations with emphasis on ethical business practices and employee protection from institutional manipulation, growth of scholarship programs serving families affected by financial crimes, and ongoing advocacy for federal policy reforms that better protect civilian rights during criminal investigations. These objectives represented positive transformation of traumatic experience into meaningful contribution to community welfare and institutional accountability. Personal goals focused on maintaining healthy relationship with James while continuing to process lessons learned from institutional betrayal, expanding family connections through potential future children who would benefit from extended network of authentic relationships, and modeling resilience and integrity for other people whose lives had been disrupted by systematic deception and manipulation. These aspirations emphasized building rather than simply recovering from traumatic institutional experience. The journey from federal investigation victim to community advocate had required extensive personal growth, professional development, and therapeutic support, but had ultimately provided foundation for meaningful contribution to social justice and institutional accountability efforts. While institutional manipulation had caused significant trauma and relationship damage, the experience had also revealed personal strength and community support that had enabled positive transformation of victimization into advocacy and service. Amanda's parallel journey from unwitting money laundering participant to nonprofit leader serving other financial crime victims demonstrated similar transformation of traumatic experience into meaningful community service. Our shared experience had strengthened sister relationship while providing foundation for collaborative advocacy work that honored both our individual healing and broader social justice objectives. The resolution had taken years to achieve and required ongoing maintenance through continued therapy, advocacy work, and intentional relationship building, but had ultimately provided sense of purpose and meaning that purely personal recovery could not have accomplished. Transforming institutional victimization into community service had honored both personal healing needs and civic responsibility to prevent similar trauma for future investigation participants. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.